File item 127 will pass and retain. File item 128, AB 1172. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1172 by Assemblymember Chow, enacting a cybersecurity.
Assemblymember Chow, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 1172 would codify the governor's existing cybersecurity task force under the Governor's Office of Emergency Services and also create a state director of cybersecurity to oversee the task force. As our state's operations become more digitally connected, it is more vulnerable to both foreign and domestic cyber attacks. Recent cyber attacks on private and public entities have shown that these attacks are growing in number and are becoming increasingly sophisticated. Under 1172, the task force will meet quarterly and will develop a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy to assess and enhance the state's preparedness and response capability to cyber attacks. With that, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 62, no 0. The measure passes. File items 129 and 130 we will pass and retain. File item 131 we've already dispensed with. File items 132, 133 we will pass and retain. File item 134, AB 1261. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1261 by Assemblymember Burke and others, enacting to adult day health care.
Assemblymember Burke, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. All of us want to remain in our own homes and communities as we get older, and every day adult health care centers help thousands of frail Californians do just that. Unfortunately, after nearly a decade of instability, programs across the state have closed their doors, leaving individuals with few choices for care outside of a nursing home. In my district alone, 4 centers have closed, leaving over 420 of my constituents without the care that they have relied upon. AB 1261 provides some of the stability to our remaining providers in the community-based adult services program. The bill aligns state law with the Bridge to Reform waiver that currently governs adult day care, health care in California, and requires Medi-Cal managed care plans to reimburse contracted providers at rates that are not less than the Medi-Cal fee-for-service rate. There's no opposition, and the bill has broad bipartisan support. I respectfully request your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Ms. Grove, apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to rise and just briefly say thank you to the author for bringing this bill forward. It is important that we take care of our elderly, and sometimes adult daycare programs, some people make fun of them, call them babysitting programs, but you know what? Sometimes our elderly, that's all they can do in certain situations is play with these beach volleyballs or, do puzzles and things like that, and it just keeps their minds active, and I just thank the author for bringing it forward.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Assemblymember Burke, you may close.
I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Brown just threw her mic up. Mic's going down. Okay. With that, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 67, no 0. The measure passes. Colleagues, we're going to go back to file item 133 and take that item up. AB 1242. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1242 by Assemblymember Gray, enacting into water quality.
Mr. Gray, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, AB 1242 requires the State Water Resources Control Board to identify projects that would restore fish populations without diverting water away from Central Valley farms and municipalities. In an area already struggling with double-digit unemployment, where the availability of water means the creation and or destruction of thousands of jobs, we must manage water responsibly. AB 1242 simply asks the Water Board to do its due diligence, supported by labor, business, government, local government, education, and ag, and I would respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Olson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I, too, rise in support of AB 1242. This is an important bill to our state as well as to our community in the northern part of the Central Valley, all of the Central Valley for that matter. It's a simple bill. It just asks the State Board to consider all alternatives when they're dealing with some of the challenges we're facing with the drought in California. It has wide support from a variety of stakeholders, as my colleague suggested, and we urge your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Gray, you may close.
Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 60, noes 5. The measure passes. Going now to file item 135, AB 1534. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1534 by the Committee on Revenue and Taxation and Act relating to taxation.
This bill will be presented by Assemblymember Ting. Mr. Ting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 1534 is a Rev and Tax Committee bill. It sets up an assessment analyst program for all the folks in the assessor's offices who actually make determinations on change in ownership. The bill codifies that certification to make sure they get trained properly and are certified as per state law. Respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 67, no 0. The measure passes. File item 136, AB 38. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 38 by Assemblymember Eggman and Act relating to the California State University.
Ms. Eggman, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise today to present AB 38, which would say directs the LAO to do a statewide comprehensive study of when we're going to invest in our next higher educational system, that they do a statewide comprehensive look to see where it makes sense for the next one to go. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 60, noes 4. The measure passes. Going to file item 137, AB 40. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 40 by Assemblymember Ting and others and Act relating to transportation.
Assemblymember Ting, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 40 merely says that we should keep all bridges free for pedestrians and bikers. The Golden Gate Bridge Authority has been considering to charge pedestrians and bikers a fee. The study showed that there will only be about $500,000 to $2 million raised. It would be the only bridge really in the continental U.S. that would actually charge that fee. So we decided to make sure that we codify legislation that all bridges in the state will not be allowed to charge pedestrians and walkers, especially in light of our really goals to reduce our petroleum usage and make sure that we ensure a healthier lifestyle and reduce our greenhouse gases. We think this bill fits right in with that mindset. Thank you. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Levine, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in support of AB 40 and proud to join author of this legislation. In protecting the environment, California public policy has long encouraged motorists to get out of their cars and use public transit, walk, or bike. To charge pedestrians or bicyclists a toll to cross a bridge is contrary to that policy. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Ting, you may close.
I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 56, noes 11. The measure passes. Going now to file item 138 for amendments, AB 80. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 80 with amendments by Assemblymember Campos.
Ms. Campos, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 80 are amendments that are technical, and they add Assemblymember Bonta, Jones Sawyer, and Williams as joint authors, and Assemblymember Cristina Garcia as co-author. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, we can take a voice vote on these amendments. All those in favor of the amendments, please say aye. All opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The bill is out to print and back on file. Going now to file item 139, AB 96. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 96 by Assemblymember Atkins and others and Act relating to animal parts and products.
Speaker Atkins, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise to present Assembly Bill 96, which will close loopholes in current law that allow for the sale of illegally poached ivory in California. The current poaching crisis is devastating elephant and rhino populations as growing demand for elephant ivory and rhino horn causes prices for ivory and rhino horn to soar. California is a top market for ivory, with illegal sales of ivory estimated to have doubled over the past 8 years. On average, 96 elephants per day are killed for their ivory, translating into an average of over 35,000 elephants per year. This is a violent, brutal business from start to finish, as elephants and rhinos are often still alive as poachers begin the gruesome process of extracting the ivory. This type of species loss is unsustainable, and African elephants are now being slaughtered faster than they are being born, which will eventually result in their extinction. Protecting elephants and rhinos is a key conservation imperative. These large species are often referred to as ecosystem engineers because their presence is critical to habitat management and environmental balance. It's clear to me that ending the ivory trade is a key conservation imperative. We have the power to significantly reduce demand for ivory by passing AB 96. California should not allow a loophole to turn us into a haven for illegal ivory and rhino horn trade. So I would ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 53, noes 12. The measure passes. Colleagues, I'd like to go to Speaker Atkins' remaining two items on today's daily file. If we could take up file item 148, AB 635, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 635 by Assemblymember Atkins, enacting relating to Medi-Cal.
Speaker Atkins, you may open.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. Members, AB 635 requires the Department of Health Care Services to seek federal funding to establish a program that will support medical interpreter services to limited English proficient Medi-Cal beneficiaries. Today, more than 40% of Californians speak a language other than English at home. And as you know, when limited English-speaking individuals attempt to access health care, their language barrier can contribute to inadequate patient evaluation, lack of appropriate treatment, or unnecessary procedures and cost. AB 635 will help California maximize resources by accessing federal dollars to support language assistance to meet the increasing demands of our diverse population. The intent of this bill is to ensure that all Medi-Cal beneficiaries have access to appropriate health services. I would ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 59, noes 1. The measure passes. Going to Speaker Atkins' final item for today, if we could go to file item 203, AB 437. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 437 by Assemblymember Atkins and others, enacting to small businesses, making appropriation therefore.
Speaker Atkins, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to present Assembly Bill 437, which allows small businesses to receive a grant from the state in proportion to the amount of research and development tax credits they have earned. Creating a grant program as part of the California Research Tax Credit helps small businesses monetize some of the research and development tax credits they receive and reinvest these resources. Data from the Franchise Tax Board shows that often small and medium-sized companies are able to earn R&D tax credits, but really not able to receive their monetary benefit because these businesses don't have enough taxable liabilities. AB 437 is not a reimbursable credit. Specifically, the bill authorizes eligible businesses to receive a grant of 15% of the credits generated starting in 2016. The bill also allows a 2-year look-back period for which small business can receive a grant for 10% of all tax credits received in 2014 and 2015. Additionally, AB 437 has various accountability and reporting measures, including requiring the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development to certify that the taxpayer meets the small business qualifications, requires the Comptroller's Office to report on program activities, capping the program at $50 million annually, and sunsetting it after 5 years. I would ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 69, no 0. The measure passes. If we could go back to where we were in the daily file. File item 140, AB 146, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 146 by Assemblymember Christina Garcia and others, enact relating to pupil instruction.
Assemblymember Christina Garcia, you may open.
Members, AB 146 is the winner of my second annual There Ought to Be a Law contest. It was brought forth by Leslie Hyatt's 5th grade class from Bell Gardens Elementary in my hometown. AB 146 would encourage the teaching of President Herbert Hoover's executive order to repatriate Americans of Mexican origin in the 1930s in our schools. It is estimated that over 1 million U.S. citizens were illegally deported to Mexico. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 57, noes 5. The measure passes. Going to file item 141, AB 197, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 197 by Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia, enacting into public utilities.
Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia, you may open.
Mr. Speaker and members, thank you so much for the opportunity to introduce AB 197. It is a measure that will help ensure a reliable and low-carbon grid for Californians by requiring the Public Utilities Commission to consider best fit attributes of renewable energy resources, greenhouse gas emissions, when considering renewable energy bids to comply with the Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard. Ensuring that these factors are considered in the long-term procurement plans will help California achieve a low-carbon and reliable grid. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Assemblymember Rendon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 197 would revise the Renewable Portfolio Standard process to emphasize greenhouse gas emissions and reliability factors. In January, the governor announced ambitious goals to address climate change. Specifically, he set out goals to increase from 1/3 to 50% our electricity derived from renewable sources. He also sought to reduce petroleum use in cars and trucks by up to 50% and to double the efficiency of existing buildings. To achieve long-term climate change goals, significantly boosting the requirement to procure renewable electricity is a key component. I thank the author for bringing this forward and ask for your aye vote.
Assemblymember Garcia, you may close. Okay, at this time, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 48, noes 15. The measure passes. File item 142 we've dispensed with. File item 143 we've dispensed with. Let's go to file item, actually we're going to pass temporarily, file item 144. Let's go to file item 145, AB 401. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 401 by Assemblymember Dodd, enacting into low-income water assistance.
Assemblymember Dodd, you may open.
Mr. Speaker and members, AB 401 requires the Department of Community Services and Development, CSD, to recommend a plan for a statewide low-income water rate assistance program. Water affordability is a central element to water access, and when the costs make water unaffordable, it can pose an immediate health and safety issue. There are a number of water districts with a small and or declining ratepayer base, and these districts often increase the water rates they charge to cover their infrastructure costs. In some service areas, water rates have jumped as much as 300% since 2006. Making water affordable is a complex problem. AB 401 takes a step towards addressing water affordability problems by directing the Department of Community Services Development to study this issue and report back to the legislature with recommendations on possible statewide solutions by 2017. This will allow the legislature to consider future actions which could assist low-income households afford their water services. I'm unaware of any opposition to the bill, and I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 49, noes 17. The measure passes. We're going to pass temporarily file item 146 and go to file item 147, AB 578. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 578 by Assemblymember Lowe, enacting relating to employment.
Assemblymember Lowe, you may open.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm delighted to present Assembly Bill 578, which is a simple measure that brings transparency to the Cal OSHA Standards Board. This bill would bring transparency to the process by requiring that notice is given to workers when a variance is required and allows workers to participate in the hearing. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Harper, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. I agree with the author that we should clear up confusion with the existing law. I would support disclosure in elevator installations. Existing law already requires an employer to notify their employees of a variance to Cal OSHA regulations. Under this bill, would every person walking by the building need to know whether an elevator is being installed? It can be burdensome for the owner of a building or standalone business to let every possibly affected worker know what's going up or down with an elevator installation. An extensive hearing process seems unnecessary just to install an elevator. Let's focus on the employees who are truly affected rather than speculating and inviting too many cooks into the kitchen. Colleagues, I urge a no vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Lowe, you may close.
I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
The clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 45, noes 23. The measure passes. File item 48, we have already dispensed with. File item 149, we will pass and retain. Let's go now to file item 150, AB 676. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 676 by Assemblymember Calderon, an act relating to employment.
Assemblymember Calderon, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 676 will help end discrimination against unemployed workers as they re-enter the job market. Employers and employment agencies will be prohibited from affirmatively asking an applicant to disclose information concerning the applicant's current employment status until the employer has determined that the applicant meets the minimum employment qualifications for the position. Studies have found that the long-term unemployed are discriminated against in the application process, including one that found that long-term unemployed workers with otherwise identical resumes were called back for interviews at rates 45% lower than the short-term unemployed. AB 676 will also prohibit employers, employment agencies, and persons operating a job posting website from publishing an advertisement or announcement for any job that includes a provision stating or indicating that an individual's current employment is a requirement for the job. Although California's unemployment rate continues to fall and economic conditions are improving, this is not translating to the long-term unemployed in California. A Princeton study found that only 11% of those unemployed for more than 6 months will ever regain steady full-time work. Thank you, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 46, noes 22. The measure passes. Let's go now to file item 151 for purposes of amendments. AB 708, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 708 with amendments by Assemblymember Jones Sawyer.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer, you may open on your amendments.
Mr. Chair and members, I rise today for purposes of amendment. While in appropriations, the Department of Toxic Controlled Substances was implicated with enforcement duties, which was not the intent of this bill. In order to correct this error, these amendments move the language of AB 708 from Division 20 of the Health and Safety Code to Division 104. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Waldron, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Without objection on the amendments.
Seeing and hearing no further discussion, we can take a voice vote on these amendments. All those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The bill is out to print and back on file. File item 152, we've dispensed with. File item 153, AB 769. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 769 by Assemblymember Jones Sawyer, an act relating to public employment.
Assemblymember Jones Sawyer, back to you.
Mr. Speaker and colleagues, AB 769 requires that notice be served and an investigation completed within 1 year of any adverse action taken against a civil service state employee. This bill will ultimately improve the efficiency of state government for the taxpayers of California. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further discussion, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 53, noes 17. The measure passes. Let's go now to file item 154, AB 786. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 786 by Assemblymember Levine and others, an act relating to elections.
Mr. Levine, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. In 1993, Congress passed a federal law known as Motor Voter. Motor Voter is intended to allow ease of voter registration through a variety of governmental services. Essentially, Motor Voter was intended to create an open and easy opt-in process for registering to vote when applying for a driver's license. However, for 22 years, the DMV has only partially complied with Motor Voter. Because of this partial compliance, Motor Voter has been a failure in California. Only 14% of voter registrations in our state are submitted to the DMV. Compare this to the states like Michigan and Delaware that are fully implementing Motor Voter. More than 85% of voter registrations in Michigan were submitted at the DMV and 78% in Delaware. Clearly, in California, Motor Voter is not working as intended. However, I am encouraged that the DMV will soon come into compliance with Motor Voter. The May revise included $2.35 million for an automation project that will make it easy for motorists to register to vote at the DMV and for the DMV to share information electronically with the Secretary of State. In March, the National Conference of State Legislatures recommended that state legislatures pass bills like AB 786. The report concluded, citizens are routinely face-to-face with their government in just two places, the DMV and the polling place. No surprise, then, that they may assume that the two are linked. Legislators can help make that linkage by ensuring that their states are in compliance with the letter of the law and the intent of the federal Motor Voter law. This bill does exactly that, and I ask for your aye vote on AB 786.
Mr. Hadley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. I thank the author for bringing it forward. I do think it is incumbent upon us to ensure that all eligible voters are encouraged to take the act of registering to vote. It is one of the most important duties that we ask our citizens to undertake to protect our representative government. I urge an aye vote, and I thank the author.
Mr. Cooley, you're recognized.
I also want to jump up in support of this bill. Our institution of government depends upon an electorate, an active electorate. This will open the door to more voting by more Californians through a mechanism that California has lagged badly in implementing. I think it's important for the legislature to be that co-equal branch of government that gives direction to the state agency and clears obstacles to implement important provisions of law, of which this is indisputably one. So I'm pleased to be a co-author and to support this on the floor today.
Ms. Baker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I also rise in support of this measure from our colleague and highlight one particular good reason why, and that is because it preserves our choice to register to vote. It does not mandate or make automatic our registration to vote, and it also makes it possible to share technology. So I urge a bipartisan vote in favor of this bill from my colleagues. Thank you.
Mr. Ridley Thomas, you're recognized.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, colleagues, I rise in support of AB 786. Again, an effort to help modernize our election system and get a program that was intended to be much more successful than it's been in California, rolling, no pun intended. Thank the gentleman from Marin County for collaborating with the Secretary of State to make sure that we can implement this program in good sense and reasonable order. Respectfully request an aye vote for AB 786. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Levine, you may close.
2 years, isn't it time that we fully implement the Motor Voter Act? With this bill, it's got no opposition, supported by California Forward. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
At this time, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 53, noes 13. The measure passes. Colleagues, at this time, I'd like to go back to motions and resolutions. I'd like to recognize Mr. Holden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Ms. Waldron, please remove the following bills from consent calendar. File item 239, AB 766, Ridley Thomas.
Without objection, that should be the case. Colleagues, it is noontime. I have three announcements today, three quick announcements. The first is, as we are all aging gracefully in our seats today, there is someone who is celebrating his 25th birthday. I'd like to recognize Mr. Kacho Sajian. Happy birthday. And two additional announcements. The Rules Committee will be meeting in the Rules Committee room 10 minutes prior to session when we reconvene after caucus. That's going to be at 1:20 p.m. in the Rules Committee room. Colleagues, as we know, there will be both the Democratic and Republican caucus meetings starting at noontime. They'll be ending at 1:30, and we will be starting promptly again, floor session at 1:30 this afternoon. At this time, this House stands in recess until 1:30 p.m.